today. Our guest tonight is Britain's most decorated female Olympian. Having recently ended her 20-year rowing career with 5 Olympic medals, she has seen Olympic success in Sydney, Athens, Beijing, and London, and she is one of the most important figures in British sports. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a warm, warm welcome for Dame Katherine Grainger?
Thank you. Hello. Again.
Thanks so much for coming.
There you go. Pleasure. Hello, everyone.
So can I ask, is this your first time in Cambridge?
Very reclined.
They're so comfy.
They are. I've been up for a long time. I might have a little nap.
Yeah.
If I bore myself. I know my stories.
I hope I can ask you something interesting enough to not make you fall asleep.
Well, that's on your head. So I've been to Cambridge. Of course, I've been to Cambridge before.
Okay, and it's your first time in the Union, obviously.
This is the first time in the Union.
So I suppose my question for
Might
you...
be my last. I don't know. That's how it goes.
It's gone so wrong for me already. My first question to you is this. You didn't actually start rowing until you were at university. What were you like when you were young, and what was life like before rowing?
Life before rowing. I've forgotten there was such a thing. What was I like? Oh my God, you should ask other people. So I was always sporty, and so if I'm obviously honest, so I've got a big sister and who's just over a year older than me. So she was a year older than me at school, and if anything, she was more sporty than I was. So she used to join all the clubs and go to all the stuff, and eventually my mum and dad were a bit like, "Are you going to do something? Go and do something." So I went and joined. She just joined the karate club, so I went to join the karate club, and stayed there and got my black belt, and then kind of thought I'd go to university and that's what I'd do. I wanted to study law, and I wanted to do karate, and I wanted to do a little bit of. I still love theatre and stuff like that. I wanted to go into the all universities have great theatrical clubs, and then I went to Freshers' Fair, and joined the karate club. Obviously started doing law. Went to the first, I can't remember what the theatre club in Edinburgh was called. It was at Edinburgh University. And went in and they were all like, "Oh, darling, what theatre have you done so far?" And I was like, "I've done literally like the school play and the pantomime, and I did behind stage." And I don't think my work was needed there. They had a lot better people. And then I only signed up for rowing because they said it'd be a free drink involved. And
So that's how it happened.
That's how it happened.
Fantastic.
That's how it happened.
Okay, because you have, just for context, you have 2 degrees in law and a three degrees
Well,
in
the
law
PhD
and a
counts
PhD
as
from
my
King's
third.
College. We did count them all before. Was there ever a point where you thought you may be going towards an office job or a more professional career like law?
Yeah, I didn't grow up planning to be in sport, and
Yeah.
I mean now with all the funding in place, a lot of people do grow up wanting to be athletes and sports people, and that's great. But when I grew up, no, I did rowing because it was sociable, and that was my main. I thought I'd do university, and I'd loved it at university. I thought I'd leave it there. And I took this 20-year tangent in my life, but I went to do law because I wanted to be a barrister. I wanted to be in court. I did criminal law. I wanted to work in that world, and I did it mainly because I'd watched far too many legal dramas when I was growing up, and I was like, oh, I want to be that person wearing that really great suit, making great speeches. And I went and started my first kind of tax lecture and thought, oh God, they don't make films about this, for good reason. And even now, I mean, when I finished rowing after Rio, I still thought, should I go into law? Because that was kind of my first love. And I felt very, very strongly about justice and injustice and all those massive issues that I'm quite idealistic and I'm quite optimistic, which helps massively in sport a lot of the time. But I feel that same way about law. To me, law is so important and so valuable and so valid, and I wanted to be in that kind of fighting the good fight in law. And part of me still thinks, I wanted to make a difference, and I thought I'd do it in that world. And part of me thinks, oh God, I never quite did that. I did it by sitting in a boat going backwards instead.
Yeah, change of path.
Also.
Was there one moment where you thought, wow, I'm actually quite good at rowing, when you realised that it was definitely for you and that you didn't want to be a lawyer? Like a light bulb moment, I suppose.
No, I had... so before I went to uni, the only time I ever sat in a boat was, I grew up in Glasgow, like I said, my big sister was there. We had neighbours who actually, ironically, were really into rowing. So when I was growing up, they were always a bit like, come down, and we were both quite tall, so come down and get in the boat, you'd love it. And I mean, I don't know how many people are rowers here, but people who love rowing, like, really love rowing, right? We're all a bit extreme. So they were like, oh my God, you just got to come and row. And we were like, no, just not really into it. And we were persuaded to go out once, and we went out in a boat, my big sister, myself, and two of her friends. And we literally, this was in the River Clyde many, many years ago. We kind of went up and dribbled up and down for a bit. And I thought that was all very nice. I've ticked that box. They'll back off now. And I never thought I'd do it again, genuinely. There was no kind of, oh, wow, this is my thing. I was still crashing around all over the shop and thought I'd go back to doing other things. And then years later, like not even that long ago, my mum and dad were talking to me, reflecting on where my life had gone instead. And they said, do you remember that first outing, that very first outing back in Glasgow? And I was like, vaguely, really? I said, do you remember it? Was anything said to you at the time? And they said, oh my goodness, yes. Gordon, who was the father next door, who had taken us out, had come back to my mum and dad and had said, oh my goodness, your daughter shows amazing potential for this sport. And if she goes into this, we really think she could be really good. And I genuinely berated my poor mum and dad by going, oh my God, you never told me this. Imagine if I'd known earlier. Because, I was insecure and, kind of worried about what I was going to do like everyone else at that age. And if you told me that, and, especially, girls in sport, they need encouragement and belief and all this stuff. And they finally went, no, Katherine, that was your sister they were talking about. Which is true. And they didn't mention you, so we never talked to you about that. So my sister is never rowed since, and so chuffed knowing that she's the better rower in the family.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, how supportive were your parents of the change from law to rowing?
Oh, they were amazing. They were genuinely. So I graduated during my university career. They were kind of aware. I started as a university student doing law, very committed to it. Really wanted to do it, apart from the tax bit. Really wanted to do a lot of it, and then dabbling in rowing, and then by the end of the 4-year university degree in Edinburgh. By the end of the 4 years, I was sort of dabbling in law and really committed to the rowing. So they were aware this whole thing had shifted, but they were incredibly, they're both teachers, and they really believe in education. So really kind of was like, you can do whatever you want, but please finish your degree. So I did finish my degree, and I was very proud to, and I wanted to. But when I then graduated in my final year, I sort of said I wanted to sort of give rowing a go and see if I could, And again, it wasn't, it's not the system we know now. It wasn't a internationally incredibly successful sport. We didn't have the funding in place in this country. So it wasn't a sort of an obvious choice. No one in my family had done sport like that. So they, it was a really kind of surprise to them. But they were brilliant. They never gave the impression, this is insane, or, oh, good God, you have a backup plan, or, go and play, but, you're coming back and doing a real job soon. They were just, they're very much go and follow your dream, and we'll be here if it goes wrong. And I think that is just, I can't put a price on that. I mean, to have people there to say, go on. And if it doesn't work out, fine, we'll be fine, but, go and try it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and obviously it went very right. It won't surprise you that there are more rowing questions to come. But just while we're talking about kind of your childhood and your earlier years, I thought I'd take a bit of a tangent and say, what was your best university experience, just to kind of understand what you were like and what happened to you while you were at Edinburgh?
My best ones I probably can't remember.
Okay.
For good reason.
Anything
I loved university. I don't know. I mean, you're all students and hopefully loving it right now. I remember. Do people know Edinburgh? Have people been to Edinburgh? It's a great, great city. If you haven't go, you must go. And I went, and one of the only bits of advice my parents had given me, because they had met at Edinburgh as well as when they were studying education, and they were like, first time moving away from home, and you've got to be safe, and go and enjoy yourself, but be safe and all this. And there's this huge bit in Edinburgh called the Meadows, which is just a massive, massive green park in the middle of the centre of the city. And they were like, whatever you do, don't cross the meadows at night. Right? So I thought, okay, don't cross
Good
the
advice.
meadows at night. Didn't know what the meadows were, but I thought, okay, don't cross these things at night. And I remember the first week, Freshers Week, which all of you have clearly survived, which is like the first endurance test you get at university. about the third night in, obviously it's all the clubs and all the parties and all the rest, and one of my friends from school who was at Edinburgh with me as well, and she had a big brother at university, and they asked us to go to like a flat party. And we were like, oh my God, we're so cool now. Because we're not going to like freshers parties, we're going to like, they were third year going into fourth year. They were like final year students, and we're going to their apartment, and like just how cool, we've made it. We're like 3 nights in, we've totally made it. So I remember going along, and all these incredibly drunken final year students all being like, oh my God, you're so lucky, this will be the best years of your life, you're just starting off in this amazing journey. And I was like, do you know what? Like, I was a bit kind of like, how do you know? How do you know this is going to be the best time of my life? Because, you know, none of us know. I might not like it, I might not settle in, I might not enjoy it, and all the rest. And then, you know, a few drinks in, and I remember staggering back quite late at night across this massive bit of green expanse in the city centre, going, wonder where we are now. Realising it was the meadows at middle of the night. Which I found out later. And then genuinely, like 3 or 4 years on, I was at those parties going to all the freshers. You're so lucky, these are the best years of your life. Because honestly, I loved it. I just adored university. I met my best friends there even now who, the lovely thing is the people I met at university, and I met them, to be honest, I met my best friends through rowing. So I met people through doing law, but and I really liked the friends I met doing law, but they were great, and I'm in touch with some of them now. But I went to the rowing club, and the first few nights out at the rowing club, I was like, these are my people. You know, and if you get the right group of people, it's just magical. So even now, from the people I rowed with in my first year, 3 of them I'm now godparent to their children, and one I was bridesmaid for. I mean, just friends for life. And now when I do all this stuff, and they know me before any of this happened. They know the truth. And they hold me to that. So I think you're really, if you get friends at that point and you can hold on to them, it's absolutely worth it. But I had a great time. I worked really hard, but I played really hard at uni, as you should.
Oh, fantastic. And were you always very disciplined? Were you always Olympic gold medalist disciplined?
No, I'm not even that disciplined at things now. I think my theory on that is I found something that I adored and I was so passionate about and I cared about, and that brought the discipline because I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it more than anything, and I actually wanted to keep studying as well as rowing. So you need to be phenomenally disciplined and kind of incredibly good at time management to master both of those at the very top level. But I really cared about doing them both. And that to me brought the discipline. I'm not a naturally disciplined person. But because I wanted to achieve and I had very ambition on both sides, it kind of forced me to be more disciplined.
Yeah.
But now, my God, I'm as lazy as anyone when I can be.
Just a normal uni student.
Oh, completely.
Okay, so I was wondering if you could talk us through a little bit about the jump from just rowing at Edinburgh to your Olympic journey. So to Sydney in 2000?
Yeah, a long time ago now, before probably some of you were born. So I genuinely went to university. I just went to row for fun. Again, I fell in love with the people that I rowed with before I fell in love with the sport, probably. I wasn't very good for a long time. I was physically good. I was always a good athlete. But I wasn't took a long time to kind of learn the mastery of the sport. So if you're physically very capable, you can get to a certain point in rowing relatively easily. Then you get found out. So in my first year, I was a really good novice. I was a really good novice. I like being a novice. I was a very good novice. And then in my second year, I remember being like, I'm now going to be a really good senior. Right, second year, here we come. And this is really true. Went through all the trials for the first couple of weeks to get into the senior team. And went to the meeting where we very publicly, the coach of the senior women read out the selected crews. And they needed 4 fours. And they read them out in order. So we're all sitting in a massive, a typical university sort of steep sides place. And we're all sitting there. And I was a bit like, I've got this. And because I was physically, I could do all the tests, I was fine. So then he went, right, top senior boat, and he read out the 4 names. And I was like, oh, jeez, I'm not in that. Like, okay, that's fine, because I can be in the second boat, because I've got something to aim for then. So he read out the second boat, I wasn't in that. So I was like, right, third boat it is. Read out the third boat, I wasn't in that. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in the bottom senior boat. So you read out the fourth senior boat, and I wasn't in that. And I generally had this moment of going, I'm either so bad or so good. And honest to God, I was so bad. They said, so that's the senior team. And we're going to put together a fifth boat, and they did call it a remedial boat. And it would be for people who would probably be more social than anything else in the club. And that was me.
Someone with a good heart.
Yeah, that's not how they described it.
Yeah.
So I was really a bit bad at that stage. And in all honesty, I left that meeting. And I kind of, and again, if you know Edinburgh, just outside the main bit of the city is it's an old volcano, but it's a hill called Arthur's Seat. And you can climb Arthur's Seat and you can look out into the beautiful views of the city. And again, somewhere you shouldn't go at night. But I left that meeting, and it was the start of the term, so it was like, autumn, quite dark at night. And I remember leaving that meeting, and I was totally humiliated. I was absolutely humiliated for not making the team. And I kind of just sort of, genuinely sort of tears in the eyes, sort of blundered to the top of Arthur's Seat. And I had this moment, slightly like raging to the skies, of kind of going, I will never, and I had that kind of conscious moment, I will never, ever overestimate my abilities, ever. And, if I'm going to do this, and I obviously care enough to be doing this, that I would need to go back and start again and, learn it the hard way and just realize I've got a lot to learn from. So I came back down the hill, a bit more humble probably, and just kept that ethos. So got into the team, stayed in the fifth boat to work my way back up. In my third year, I was a better senior, and in my fourth year, was captain of the club, and I rode for Scotland in my third year, and then in my fourth year was asked to go and try for British trials.
Okay, so that's quite a big jump the whole way up.
It is, and it felt a huge jump, but it's one of those things. So I didn't have those ambitions for myself.
Yeah.
My big drive thing was, how good could I be? How could that's why I wanted to find out how good I could be. In my second year, I thought I could be a good senior, and I wasn't, but I got better. In my third year, I genuinely was I remember I was at the gym, and I overheard one of the coaches talking to someone else, and they mentioned my name, so I started listening in, and they said, I think she could one day row for Scotland. And I'd never imagined that, and that to me was massive. And it was because he said it to someone else, and they didn't know they didn't know I could hear from where I was. And I think if he'd said to me, I think you could row for Scotland, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, because it's people trying to lift you. And I thought, because he'd said it to someone else, that he must mean that. So that became my really focus and goal, and I did it. And then in my fourth year, the coach at the university said very directly, why don't you try British trials? And I was like, just ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. It was a year after the 96 Olympics, so that is going up against the Olympic team. That's what you're going to go and trial against. And then you realise, well, you're not expected to go and beat the Olympic team. You're expected to go and show some sort of potential, and it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be tactical, it could be technical, it could be something. All they're looking for is something that they see potential of, that they can mould and lift and create and teach and educate and coach, and they will create you into a champion if possible. But they just need to see something, and that's what you had to show. So it was a huge leap in some ways, but actually it's kind of, you just need to take that first step, and then the system is in place to get you the rest of the way.
Yeah, so it sounds like the knockback was quite important for you.
Yes, I can see that now from a very happily reflective
Yeah.
place. It's like the disappointments in my rowing career when I lost gold medals. So you go, now, it made me the athlete I am. And it's all true, but at the time, it's just crushing.
Yeah,
but you live through it, and we all do. All of us would have had massive disappointments. There'll be more to come in our lives, and you realise that how you deal with that is how you define yourself ultimately.
Yeah, well, that's the silver lining, I guess. And
Literally.
I'll let that sink in. Your first silver medal happened in Sydney in 2000.
Yeah, I loved that one.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Is that your favourite medal? Is that
No, there's one that's more favourite.
How does it feel to win? Like, what was that like? Can you tell me a bit about your first Olympic?
So this is going back a long time. This is 2000. Australia was great. Australia, and we'll see at the Commonwealth Games in April this year. Australians love their sport. They adore their sport. They do it brilliantly. They're one of the most competitive countries to compete against. The most annoying to compete against. They won't back off. But they're brilliant, and the crowds were incredible. The venues were stunning. And I went to my first Olympic Games not really knowing what I was getting myself in for. You can watch it, you can hear about it, you can get the stories until you actually are part of that Team GB and you walk and you have no idea what it's going to be like. And I went to the opening ceremony, which is just immense. And it was, I did it, and I did find it quite profound. And it's not making too big a thing of it. You march in as part of this united team across all these different sports, and you're all wearing the same kit, and you walk behind the flag. And in Sydney, they had built the biggest multi-sport stadium that they have ever built. It was 115,000 seater. So it went up higher than every other stadium that exists. And what they did, to sort of guarantee it be used afterwards, they built it in a way that they could then take off that top tier, and it would work as a normal stadium, 70, 80,000. But they made 115,000 seats for during those Olympic Games. So it was immense, and we walked in, and as you walk, it's like you come through the tunnel to come out into the stadium, and it was quite quiet as you came through the tunnel, and as you stepped out into the stadium, 115,000 people cheering, and flashbulb photography, and it's just this massive celebration, and you walk in with all these different nations, about 200 other nations, and the Olympic flag goes up, and the torch really was phenomenal. It's if you're an Olympian, the torch means something to you. Really, the symbol is immense. And every Olympics, they light the torch in Athens, in the home of Olympia, and they bring that flame to the host country. And in Sydney was one of the first ones. They did a sort of round the world tour to get the flame there, and then it arrived in the Olympic Stadium on the opening ceremony night. And they try and keep a secret of who will light the cauldron. And it's always like a big deal of who this is going to be. And in 2000, it was the 100th anniversary of women competing at the Olympic Games. So as the torch came in, they did a relay of past female Australian champions. And then they handed it finally to Kathy Freeman, who was their 400-metre runner. And she had the 400-metre final about 10 days later. And if she could win that 400-metre race, she'd be the first Aboriginal Australian to win an Olympic title. So she was the GSN. She was the poster girl of the whole Sydney Games. I mean, she had everything on her shoulders, not just trying to win at home games, but trying to do it for a whole part of the Indigenous population. I mean, she had everything on her. And they gave her the torch, and she walked through to the edge of the stadium, and she walked up these stairs to where they'd put at the top this massive pool of water. So she walked across water. It's kind of a nice touch. And then she walked to the edge of the lake, and she put the torch down, and it ignited in fire right around her, just this ring of flame just lit. And then that finally lifted up and raised itself to the top of the stadium, and the flame in the cauldron lived there for 2 weeks, day and night. But what we didn't realize till later, because you're all watching this like, oh my God, in awe, it actually got stuck on the way up. So there's Kathy Freeman standing in a lake of water with fire all around her, and someone genuinely on the sidelines going, "Kathy, stay there, we'll get it fixed in a second." You think, oh my God, no wonder she aced her Olympic final 10 days later. And I was really lucky. I was in the stadium 10 days later when she competed. And again, 115,000 sellout crowd. Everybody in the world knew about Kathy Freeman's final. Everyone knew the day of it at the time, but it was just global news. And Denise Lewis was competing that day for Great Britain, and Jonathan Edwards as well. And the British athletes in the stadium at the time will talk about when she came in just to warm up, everything stopped. And if you've been in an Olympic stadium, there's people throwing javelins while steeplechasers go. I mean, it's dangerous, quite frankly, but there's a lot happening. And they have events running all the time, sort of constantly. And then she walked in to warm up, and everything just stilled. And then it started going again. And then when her final was called, every event stopped and every official stopped. And she walked up to the start line, and she was in the green and gold of Australia. And if you haven't seen it, you should go and find it. She pulled up the hood, and she was in this sort of aerodynamic skin suit. And so she had this green and gold all the way down, and she got down the blocks, and I have never heard 115,000 people fall absolutely silent. It was genuine, just silence, waiting for that start line. And then the gun went, and the whole place exploded in just noise and light And obviously it's a staggered start in the 400 metres, so you couldn't see. No one quite knew how she was doing until she came around that final bend. She was miles ahead of everyone and just aced it. And she does this amazing bit. She crosses the line and kind of collapses down to the track and doesn't react. And everyone's coming up and saying, well done. And then she finally pulls the hood back, comes this massive grin, and collected the Australian flag and the Aboriginal flag and did this whole kind of finish line. And you're there as an athlete watching that thinking, that is history. You are watching history made all the time in those events. It's just the best thing ever. And for the British side and the rowing side, it was Steve Redgrave's 5th gold. So actually the British focus was massively on rowing that summer. And he raced the day before us. And obviously it smashed it as well and became, at that point, our most decorated Olympian. And then we had our final the next day. And we went to stay in the same house because the village was quite far away from the rowing lake. So we stayed in a house right by the rowing lake the night before our final for ease. And I remember us going in, and you're very nervous. You're very, very nervous the night before your Olympic final. We went into the house, and these lovely people who kind of had let us stay there were like, "Oh, come in. This is the house that Steve Redgrave was in the night before his final." We're like, "Oh, thanks." So they went through this. This is the kitchen Steve Redgrave was in. This is the kettle Steve Redgrave used. Okay, we got the point. So everything is just a little bit tense. But for us in Sydney, at that point, we had never had any Olympic medal for any of the women's team in British rowing. So for us, Steve Redgrave and Matthew Pinsent and the likes the day before had been this huge inspiration. But we were trying to see if we could do something for the first time ever for the women's side. And there'd been just nothing. We'd done sort of nothing before that could prove that women's rowing could be on the map for the British team. And our big thing was, could we just get in the podium? The medal colour was totally irrelevant. It was, could we get in the podium? Could we finally make that breakthrough and win an Olympic medal? And we had the most amazing meeting the night for our final that just pulled us all together in a way we hadn't experienced before. And then we went out to race the next morning, and it was incredible because we were doing it for each other as much as for ourselves, and we just knew we had this. You feel you've got this incredible opportunity that once every 4 years, if you're lucky enough to get there, you have the gift of this chance, and no one will. There's no guarantees, and there's no things. There's upsets and new things happen all the time, but you have this opportunity. You've got 2,000 meters to do whatever you can with that, and see if you can do something that will put your own name in history in a little bit. And we did it. We won the first medal, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, what goes through your mind when you're racing? Is there a way to stop the nerves getting to you on the day?
No, it's not.
Or maybe do they help? Are they?
Yeah, they are. And to be honest, you want to have nerves. You want to feel, you want to feel you want that heart-pounding stuff. You want to feel it matters. You want to feel it's different. And there's all these different theories. Do you just try and talk it down and say it's just like any other race because you've done loads of races before, or do you want to feel it is? And everyone's a little bit different how they cope with that moment, but it should come. It should, that horrible dread. And Matthew Pinsent talks quite openly about on the drive in the minibus on the way to his final Olympics in Athens. He just wanted the bus to crash. And he didn't want anything awful to happen to any of them, but he said, if I'd be okay now never knowing if we could win that or not. I just don't want to go through that. If something could stop us now, I'd just take it, because you just have this, he's someone who's won, 4 Olympic golds in a row, and yet he was dreading kind of what's coming. So the nerves come, and it's not panic, but it's, it really is that absolute heart-thumping stuff that you worry about and you think about, and you're trying to just do everything right and not let people down and all that stuff. But it makes you feel so alive. I mean, it is. You feel you're doing something incredibly special.
Yeah.
You harness it. You challenge. You use it.
Do you feel the same that the more medals you rack up, the more pressure there is on you, or the more confident you are that you can win the race?
Every situation is different. You never don't feel pressure, but it's your own pressure. It's your own pressure of performance. That's the biggest thing. I never felt. The biggest pressure to me was not other people or expectation or anything else. The most extreme was probably London, because of the the sort of scale of support in London was just really insane, which was incredible. But you as an athlete, you put that pressure on yourself. You want to deliver. your best, and that's the biggest challenge for you. Can you do it in the moment? Can you do it in that once in a 4-year chance? When it doesn't matter what you've done in the 4 years, doesn't matter how many things you've won or lost, that one day is the only one that really will ever define you as an athlete.
Yeah. You're quite outspoken on how important it is to push kind of female Olympians and female sports. As it stands, I think all the coverage proportionally represents about 7% of female sports compared to 93% male, if I've done my maths all right. How's rowing
Maths
changed?
isn't mine.
Yeah, it's not my strong point either. How has sport changed in the 20 years that
It's massively changed. Massive. So we came back from Sydney, and like I said, it was with the first medal. We went to quite a few different events post-Olympics, and I'd someone come up to me at one point and going, "We didn't know women could row," and it was a genuine statement. I thought, "Oh my God, what? We've been too busy ironing or something? Like, what do you think we've all been doing?" So that's when you realise the coverage of it is so important. It's so important for if you're talking about sport, I mean, it's in all different areas as well, but in sport, that actually people are seen to be doing it. That the stories are told, and the visual coverage is vastly important. It's why it is a constant challenge that there's not more coverage, because what we saw incredible effect was the medal that was won in Sydney, and then women have medalled at every Olympics since in rowing. Schools changed and clubs changed, and girls getting into sport changed because they suddenly saw. I ended up rowing with someone who only got into rowing, she was much younger than me clearly, because she had watched the Sydney Olympics and was inspired by that. So the inspiration, the cause and effect is immense, and that's why you want amazing female athletes out there doing amazing things and their stories being told, because it does have an effect. It absolutely kind of inspires a whole different generation to try stuff.
Yeah, and just before we open up to the floor, the Lent bumps.
I'm not available.
I wasn't. Well, actually, I was going to ask. The Lent bumps are taking place this week, and there are a room full of people that I feel are probably interested in rowing. What's your advice to the people taking part in this obscene sport?
Bumps, I can't comment on. I've never done bumps. I was thinking something earlier tonight, actually. If you're not in Oxford or Cambridge, the concept of bumps is slightly frightening.
No.
On many different levels. We were given, when it's a long time ago, we were given one boat, basically, for the whole women's team, and we had to look after it. And it was generally a boat that had been used, I think, for 20 years by the men's team, and they'd finished with it, so then we got gifted it. And it was like our pride and joy, and it was like so soft and so decrepit, and God knows it limped its way down any piece of water, but it was our pride and joy. And the thought of entering competition against people in your own club or fellow clubs, trying deliberately to smash that boat up, is just really alien to everyone else who's not in this world. So I don't have any advice on bumps itself, but anyone in rowing, like I said, we're all obsessive, aren't we, really? But I love it. I don't know what it is about the sport. I asked someone, I talked to someone this years ago about rowing, and God, I can't remember what they did. They were like a scientist. They were a very, very intelligent scientist person. And I was saying, I sort of said in passing that, everyone I've met in rowing, there's quite an obsession with the sport. Once you get into it, you stay into it like for life, and it kind of draws people in and hooks people, and I don't understand why. And he said, absolutely dead seriously, I said, oh yeah, no, I know. It's a fact, actually. Because the rhythm and the timing, the style of rowing is the only thing in life, not just the sport, the only thing in life that is closest to sex. I never was given the proof of where the scientific research came from, but he said it's almost like a human need. So I thought, okay, we'll go with that. So I can't say in this room why we're all so hooked by this sport, but I can just say it's brought me best opportunities in life, best friends in life, but it has all my ups and downs in my career, all the challenges I took on. Rowing, of everything I've done, has asked the most of me and made me respond the most in anything I've done, and it has made me a better person for it, and a more fulfilled person, and got more experience than I could ever imagine. So I would say anyone who's in rowing, just love it. Yeah, it's hard and it's brutal and it's unforgiving at times, but my God, it's brilliant if you can do it. And if you're not rowers, you're in the right place. Get out and find a boat. Come on.
In fact, and actually, just one more question that springs to mind. You've won 5 Olympic medals. You talk about how you've built yourself up. You were honoured by the Queen and made a Dame. And so just before I hand over to the floor, I wanted to ask, through all of this, just to get to the core of you, what's your biggest fear?
Biggest fear?
Yeah. What scares you?
What scares me? The only thing that really scares me is...
Can't say water.
No, it's not that. I have rode with people who don't like water, though. I think it makes them quite fast. But what scares me? Do you know, it's probably getting to the end of life, however point that will come, and just feeling there's more to do. I just think there's so much fabulous stuff in life to do, and I love it. And I've had sort of one chunk. I did 20 years of being an international athlete, and that was just a joy. That was an absolute gift. But now you kind of, well, that's behind me. I get to other stuff now, and I just, I find people endlessly fascinating. I find life endlessly fascinating, and there's loads of stuff I want to do and I want to keep doing, and I love learning and all that stuff. And it just scares me that at some point it will end, and I won't be done yet.
Yeah. So you don't mind that you retired? It's just a new stage in the journey.
Yeah, I still don't use the retired
That you
word.
stopped
I
rowing.
find that a bit weird still. Yeah,
You took a break.
The British team manager, so I finished obviously in Rio. British team manager wrote to me about 5 months after Rio, something like that, saying, Katherine, clearly, obviously not part of the team anymore, and we're going through the official stages of putting together the new team. I just need an email from you confirming you're now, not part of the British rowing team and won't be considered. I still haven't replied to that email.
No.
And I don't know why. I know I've stopped. I know I've retired. I've got another job now. But there's part of me that didn't really quite want to let go. So even after 20 years and 5 Olympics, which is more than most, I still am a bit reluctant to say I'm an ex-athlete. But I would go back, and I'd go back and do it all again if I could. I loved it. And I think I'm lucky. I'm one of the athletes that leaving your sport is hard, and walking away from that life and that opportunity and being part of that team and being part of that world and the thought of not sitting on another Olympic start line, all that is really hard, and overnight you lose your sort of your support, your team, you lose your purpose, you lose your mission, you lose everything like that, and it's really hard. Emotionally, it's really, really hard to kind of accept. But it's inevitable. And I think the most important thing for all the athletes is you want to find another passion, you want to find another challenge in life, another thing that will fulfill you, and you have no idea where to start generally. You don't know where to begin. And the person I was when I left university 20 years before and where I was when I stopped rowing, I was a very different person by the end of that time. So I couldn't necessarily go back to what I wanted to do then, because I was now quite a different person with different expectations. But you don't know what kind of person you are. You don't know where you fit into the real world. It's like leaving prison. So it's trying to adapt to a different world. And I'm really lucky because I've walked into a job that I adore for probably very similar reasons. But it's a hard period for most people when they try and accept they have to move into life beyond an athlete.
Do you want to just talk a bit about that job? Because it's a big role.
It is, turns out. So I applied it's probably about a year ago, about March last year, to be the chair of UK Sport. UK Sport is the funding body for all the Olympic and Paralympic sports in Great Britain. If I'm absolutely honest, I applied for it. I'd never had a job in my life, and I had never written a CV in my life. So apart from when I applied to work in the cinema when I was 15, so I was kind of like, okay, I need to apply for this job, partly because of this really difficult challenge of leaving sport. You don't know where to begin, and you're very lost for a while, and it's very easy to be stuck. You don't want to take the first step because you don't know what direction to take that step in, so you sort of stay. And people kind of get in that flux for quite a long time. And often you get forced into it because you need to have a job and earn money. And I wasn't sure where to go, and this role was advertised, and someone had pointed out to me, and I was like, there's absolutely no way I can do that, because I don't have that experience, or I don't have that level of expertise, or all that stuff. There's loads of reasons why I shouldn't go for it. But I thought, well, what I need is, I need to get started. I need something to kind of prod me and going, look. And the best advice I got at that point was, it doesn't matter what step you take, just take a first step. Because at that point, you can change direction from anywhere and you can step back if you need to, but just take a step, just go somewhere, go do something, make a decision. So I'd apply for this to write my CV, and then if I got to the interview stage, practice going through an interview, and it'd be a really good experience. So I was a little bit shocked when they offered me the job, because that's one hell of an experience. And it was when I actually started in the role, I mean, it's huge. I didn't really ever appreciate the scale of UK sport and all that it does, and the responsibilities that come with it. It's a part-time job in theory. It's not really part-time at all, but so I spent all yesterday and all today kind of with the media doing stuff off the back of the Winter Olympics, because we are sort of responsible for the money that gets invested and the results that come with it. So it does have a lot of political and media aspects to it. But ultimately, I get to still work with sports all over the country in all different ways, and I absolutely love it. And you still feel you're having an effect, you're having an influence, you have an impact. It's a big responsibility, but I work with incredible people who are so smart and so passionate, and they care so much. And I feel I'm back in a team. I feel like I'm being an athlete. I'm back in a team who care, who are on a mission, who are trying to make things better, and I still get to play in sport. I don't really feel like work anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
Okay, fantastic. So time considering, I think it is time to open up to the floor. If you have questions, just raise your hand. Wait for someone in a fluorescent jacket to get to you in the microphone. Should we go to the front here, if that's all right?
First of all, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. But for those of us who are gearing up to race bumps in -6 or whatever it's going to be tomorrow, what's the most miserable outing you've ever been on?
Oh, nice. The most miserable. Oh, God. I like this because this is an audience who gets it right. Because you can ask that question and you go, yeah, exactly. Well, where to start? I've got so many I could choose from. Because sometimes you get audiences to speak to and they go like, did you just love every single moment of every day? And you think, oh my God, no. Jeez, when that alarm clock goes off and it is minus whatever, or the rain's lashing against the window and you get down and you chip the ice off the boat, it's not glamour. The coldest outing here. So we went on a training camp years ago again, part of the British team, where they decided, so the closest, so rowing is really well renowned across all sports to be one of the toughest physical sports to train in. It's kind of respected for that. People think we're mad, but it's respected. And a lot of the scientific tests, so rowing and cross-country skiing come out as kind of the top for the physical, certainly cardio impact on the body. They're tested the most in rowing and cross-country skiing. So one of our coaches had been in Switzerland for a long time, and he came over to Britain, and he was like, I've got a perfect answer. We're going to go and we're going to do cross-country skiing and rowing together. So, I mean, initially when we're sitting in a nice warm, gym, not far from here going, sounds like a great idea. Switzerland, lovely. Skiing and rowing, sign me up. Sort of turned out to be in the mountains where you can cross-country ski legitimately. It needs to be really quite cold. And we found this lake that the Swiss team, to be fair, did use, that we could row on, that unfortunately didn't freeze. But I think we went out like -15 for a couple of days. And I don't understand why this wasn't freezing, quite frankly. I was like, freeze, God damn you. And we went rowing, and obviously you're still in your lycra, and the horrible thing was, if you got a splash, which my catches aren't always been cleanest, if, for example, you got a little bit splashed, if the water hit the rigger or anywhere with metal, it froze absolutely instantly. So if it came onto the slides, it froze. So sorry if people aren't rowing in all this technical jargon. So basically, you started the little wheels were crunching up and down because there were ice forming everywhere in the boat, and even like we're sculling, and it was like creaking around trying to break the ice as everything went, and even on your legs and stuff, there was icicles forming. And our coach, I had one of those great coaches who would basically not comment on the obvious. He'd come in, how was that then? And you'd be like, seriously cold. What did you think of, that rate 22 piece or something? And you're like, what? Have you not, we are snowmen here. What are you talking about? And he was still like, I think we can work a little bit on that feathering. So that was just miserable. It was just miserable. But there's been a lot of days it's been miserable. Those ones are the ones that you get through, those miserable days that you get through are when you can sit back and kind of, well, not know that you're mad, but you can get a little bit smug just going, we survived that. You know, those Jenny days, you talk about, you know, that's the money, that's the bank. That's you put the money in the bank. Through all the dark winters, through all the long training sessions, through all the ergo things, that is you constantly putting the money in the bank. And then the best time of year is the summer when you spend it. When you go and sit on that start line and it's 2,000 metre race and it's fast and it's furious, and all that you've put in through the winter is sitting there waiting for you to use it. That's when it's good. I love it when the sun's out and the racing's fast. That's what I come to life. And then it's worth doing all those winter days for that.
So -6 is actually lucky tomorrow.
Yeah, I've honestly just come back from South Korea. We had days it was -22 or something, -24 in the wind chill. So I honestly tonight I was like I said, I was at the BBC this morning, and nice Carol who does the weather on BBC Breakfast was there, and she was like, "Oh, Katherine, it's going to be like -6," and you're like, "And?" Like, honestly, now I'm like, "This is great. I'd recommend South Korea to everyone because you come back to this country and you're like, oh, balmy, lovely."
Can we go? Can we just get to the front row here, if that's all right?
Hi, I was just wondering, we were talking about the worst outing just there that you've ever had, but actually which is your favourite venue? Or
venue?
Yeah, across all, I mean, you've obviously travelled the world with rowing, so I've often heard Lake Bled is quite nice.
Oh, yes. The hard thing is, if you're talking about places you've rowed, a lot of them you're emotionally connected to. So, you know, the lake in Beijing was absolutely fine. I hated it because, you know, I lost there. So it's hard, you know, you have to try and go, right, no, I'll take away the emotion from it. Lake Bled in Slovenia is infamously one of the most beautiful locations possible to row on. It is, and I've talked about this before, it is like, you know, you've given crayons and a piece of paper to some child and said, like, draw a fairy tale rowing lake. Like, they would even care what a fairy tale rowing lake was like. But if you had sort of weird, like, really rowing obsessed children, you could do that with. And it is like this beautiful lake surrounded by distance, but mountains all the way around on the outskirts of it. Right by the start line, there's this huge sort of cliff that rises above the start line with a castle on the top of it that overlooks the start. The start line is actually, it's in a bay that's because it goes straight into a park, so it's all like grassy bits. There's just swans milling around, just beautifully gliding around that river, the lake, so much so that we were at the World Championships there, and we actually had to delay start line because they were like, there's a swan on the course. We're like, okay, great. Can we move it? No, we'll just watch it. And they you know, we'll wait till the swan moves. And the swan's a bit like, yeah, right. La 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 la, la 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 la. No, back over here. So you race down the course, and then within the last 500 metre, there's a quite a small island. But it's an island in the middle of the lake, and it's covered in beautiful green sort of trees. And then there's a church that's on the island, and that's all that's on it. And then there's the spires of the church steeple just rise up through the trees and just sit above it, and it's just breathtaking. You've got a castle, you've got this island, and it all looks magical. And in the morning, we did come down some mornings, and if people have been in the water, when you get that really early morning, kind of natural, kind of almost mist across the lake, and it is, and you're just like, I can't believe I have this. This is the best job in the world. You know, you get to go out and play on that. It's gorgeous, and it lives up. I've heard about it before before I went to Bled, you know, and you kind of go, yeah, right. You know, but like, can it be all that? And it is just gorgeous. But Lake Varese for ice cream. I'll just finish on that one.
Plot twist. Can we go to the row over there? Thanks. Yeah, you with your hand up.
Hi, you talked about justice and injustice and how your role in UK sport gives you the opportunity to have an effect. I wonder how you can continue to justify funding British cycling so heavily, given the doping scandals it has been and is currently embroiled in, and the legal action being brought by Jess Varnish.
Yeah, well, you can easily justify funding sports. I mean, it's what you want to do is you want to make sure we're investing in. Our role is to invest in basically trying to create inspirational success through Olympic and Paralympic medal potential. And cycling undeniably has that potential. And the vast majority of athletes within that sport have never had any question hanging over any of them. So if you're talking about justice or injustice, one of the biggest rules of justice is that you punish the guilty and you don't punish the innocent. And most athletes in cycling have never had any sense of guilt hanging over them at all. So what we do is we invest rather than individuals anyway. We invest in a system and we invest in an organisation. And when cycling got into a lot of trouble last year, which was not directly drugs related, because the drugs related has been more to do with the road cycling team and the Sky team, which is separate from British cycling. But when there has been scandal certainly with welfare, which is the Jess Varney case, which is ongoing, so I can't comment on the legal side of it. But it was very quick for an independent investigation to be called, which was down to UK Sport in conjunction with the sport, to make sure that an independent panel can look into. They've got authority to look into everything that they need to see to make sure that sport can live up to the standards that is expected of them. So everything was done looking into that sport, and a complete review of the whole sport was done to see what the allegations were and where they were justified and where they weren't. And as a result of that, quite a lot changed within cycling itself. So they had over 50 sort of changes they had to make, and they had to prove that they've made the changes they need to. And some of it was personnel, as well as organisational changes. And as they're meeting all of those, and people are happy that they are meeting the standards that are now set for them, then the investment can remain, because the athletes that we're seeing that are still involved in that sport are absolutely exceptional athletes who deserve the right to compete.
Yeah, can we go to the third row back to the guy in the light blue jumper?
Hi. So you talked about investing in sports with medal potentials, and so that's things like cycling, sailing, rowing. But that leaves sports like basketball and others without any funding. Is that something you're looking to review in the next funding cycle, given that basketball, for example, is capable of engaging so many people who would otherwise be left out of the system?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of sport. There was when I came into this position, there was sort of an open public letter written to me by all the unfunded sports, not all of them, most of them collectively, kind of saying we would like a full review of the system, because they feel if all sports should matter, irrespective of where they can finish on performance, and every sport is worthy of investment. So there's been an ongoing kind of discussion about it anyway, and I talked to the Minister for Sport today about specifically the basketball issue. I mean, basketball's got a lot of coverage in the last few weeks. There was a discussion in Parliament about it, and it is sort of seen as a sport that has a huge reach, and engaging a huge amount of the community and the population around the country that not all sports can necessarily reach. So it's worthy of consideration from that point of view. The discussions that need to be had is because UK Sport was created about 20 years ago they needed a body when the National Lottery came into play and funding was sort of created to help sports. They needed an organisation that would channel where that money would go and make the decisions of how that money should be spent. So that's what UK Sport does. And UK Sport's remit that comes from the government and in discussions and agreement with the government is to focus on the sports most likely to produce medals. So there's a separate organisation, and so in this country, Sport England so UK Sport does the very top tier, the high performance, the Olympic, the Paralympic level. Sport England does all the grassroots, all the participation and all the numbers. So they have over twice what we have to spend, and they've given a lot of money to basketball because they're trying to grow it at grassroots level. So the discussions then is, if you've got the funding can come in at grassroots, and which is needed and is a fantastic thing, but at the top level, which we do know has a big inspirational effect and can bring people into sport anyway, but you're in a sport that at the moment can't prove that it would be likely to be successful on the medal level. We can invest up to 2 Olympics in sort of ahead, so we can work with sports that maybe aren't medaling right now, but you could say in the next 8 years are quite likely to. So there are all the discussions with basketball, and even with the new 3-on-3 coming into Olympic Games, they're still saying it would take probably longer than that. It would probably take 12 years or more. to get to that level. So there's discussions going as could there be a separate fund or a separate sort of ring fence bit of money for sports that maybe don't meet the current criteria, but yet could be considered as very justified reasons for funding in those, which are broader than just what we see just now. And it's a brilliant discussion to have, because I think what we've seen in the last 20 years or so is how many sports have grown and developed and got better and better at the Olympic level and the Paralympic level across summer and winter sports. But we're also saying, well, is that all we want to focus on now? Is it just about the medal success? What about having other sports that are more positive for more community level, or more that reach more ears, or helping, all sort of social problems facing society? Could we invest in that? At the moment, UK sport can't, because we've got quite strict criteria. So we'll be looking at either changing the criteria or trying to get almost a different consideration for different funding. So those discussions are being had kind of increasingly now to sort of see. And a lot of it, this is public money. That's why we are so accountable for it. This is public money we're spending, and huge amounts of it. So that's why medal targets are set. That's why kind of very big ambitions are to justify why the investment comes. And it's a response to what the public want. So in all the discussions in the last, and it happens every few years, it always goes out to the public going, do you still believe in those big successes, the big public successes we see, the big moments around the Olympics when the medals come in? And it's always overwhelmingly, yes, we still want to see that. But now there's also voices going, we still want that, but could we also have this? And that's, unfortunately, it's going to take more money. But if we can get the government or other income to give us more money, then there's a good chance we could do that too.
Yeah, can we go to 4 rows back? Thanks.
Hi.
Hello.
So one of my biggest childhood memories was being in the Olympic Park in 2012 watching your final. And it was just all very emotional and everyone was crying and stuff. So what's it like watching people compete who you actually know personally?
Yeah, I mean, I totally believe. I mean, why 2012 was partly such success was we were talking about the coverage of sport. The media in 2012 gave so much space and so much room to tell athletes' stories. So even if you've never met some of those athletes, by reading their stories and reading their backgrounds or their ambitions or what they've overcome to get there, or all these very personal side of sport, and and even the organisation I work in now, and it's kind of like, sometimes it can feel like a business because it is an investment business, but there's always that reminder there's this huge humanity that's behind sport that makes sport so powerful and so effective, and we just can't ever lose that. And I think anyone who knows feel they've got any connection, just having read people's stories, suddenly care more. So you do care more when you're watching sports if you have read something about those athletes or understood something about their lives, or so when you actually know them personally, then you magnify that immensely. And one of the great things about rowing at the Olympic Games is Olympic Games last 2 weeks. Rowing is always in the first week. So the sort of middle weekend is always the sort of final weekend for rowing. So that gives a whole second week to, I just become a massive Team GB groupie. And I'm one of these people that I don't like calling in favours. I don't like, asking for things and all that stuff. In the second week of 2012, I called in every favour I could of anything I've ever done for anyone to try and get, because we still have to get tickets to go and see those events. You don't get to walk into any of them. Because there was, when those athletes and what it means to them and what they've been through, and where we train within rowing team, we also, the hockey teams train with us. We used to have synchronized swimming with us. We used to have judo with us. There's all different sports kind of overlap. So you get to know the other athletes so well. So well. And you just know what it means to them and what they're competing for. And it is very tense. And I've spent the last 2 weeks with the Winter Games, and it's the first Olympic Games I've been to as a spectator, which is a bit odd. But it's hard. My God, it's hard being a spectator, it turns out. The emotions are, at least as an athlete, you get to unleash that energy and that nervousness and all the rest. As a spectator, you're just sitting there and you cannot do anything, and it's hard. But it's why, I still think it's why sport is so compelling. It's why people always come back to it. It's why I meet people all the time who actually don't like sport, but every 4 years they'll get addicted and they'll be the ones up all through the night and checking, the Twitter feed or checking the results or whatever it is. because something engages people, especially at the Olympic, Paralympic level, that whether it's, the British thing and the whole team thing, or whether it's just, these exceptional stories that finally get room to be told, there's something that does seem to engage people on a different level when it comes to the Olympic Games, winter and summer, and Paralympic and Olympic. And it's fabulous to see, and people care, and people get emotional, and people cry, and people, are up all night and telling their friends and talking about it at work and all these things. And it's just this incredible power of sport that you see. And I love it, and I see it over and over again. You hear stories after stories about it. And so, yeah, it's the biggest privilege now for me to still be involved in it, but I find it very hard watching it. I do find it. I mean, I don't know if people have watched the Winter Olympics. I went to the 3 events that Elise Christie competed in, and it is just heartbreaking seeing that scale of disappointment from someone who's just trained for 4 years to get one thing and didn't get it. I mean, it's tough, but it's why because sport's unpredictable, because there's no guarantees. That's partly what makes it so brilliant, and that keeps us all coming back for more.
I think we have time for just one more question. Can we go to the back?
Wait, we can have 2. Well, I'll be quick.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you're
quick.
happy to.
Sorry, I'm giving long answers.
So if we can go all the way to the back.
Hey, could you just talk a bit about your run into Rio, where you went from not being named in the initial squad to then becoming Olympic silver medalist in one of the most competitive events?
Yes, maybe I won't be that short. So in brief, for anyone who wasn't necessarily following rowing, which I know you won't all be, so London 2012 was, when you say what's my favourite medal, that's the easy one. Winning the home Olympics doesn't come about as a nat. Anna and I was in a boat with Anna Watkins in a double. We had 3 years training and racing together, including Lake Bled. We won every single race we ever did. We broke the world record twice in training. Unofficially, we broke the Olympic record at the Olympic Games. A couple of months before the Olympics in 2012, I think it was The Guardian did it. They did a sort of most likely to win in 2012. And we were number 1, and that was above, Chris Hoy and Jess Ennis and, Mo Farah and all these massive names, and they put us in because we had won everything. So, and then when the British team is announced for the rowing team, they get this group photo. It's really like a class photo. So in 2012, they took us to London venues. We all got taken to by Windsor Castle, and kind of put on benches in front of Windsor Castle. It felt very surreal. And we had the team manager there and the head of the British team for the whole Olympic squad. And there's Anna and I in the middle, favourite girls, and it was like, yay. And then that was us launching for 2012. And then you fast forward 4 years, and the build up to Rio, we did the same press launch when the team was selected, and it was happening at Caversham, where the rowing base is now. And I generally got asked to leave the premises because we hadn't officially been selected at that point, and we didn't know if we'd get to go to Olympic Games. So from 4 years, when we were the Golden Girls even before we'd won the gold, 4 years later it's not that we were an embarrassment, but we weren't part of the team. We weren't kind of allowed to be announced at that point. We didn't know if we'd go. We did a really, really tricky year. We'd qualified the double the year before Rio, so in 2015. So the boat qualifies, but not the people. So we knew the double would go. We thought we'd be the double. We did a lot of selection earlier on in 2016. Anna came back briefly. But she had two kids by then, so in the end she didn't stay in the team. Vicky and I got back together and then started competing. But we did a couple of early races and it didn't go brilliantly well. We weren't really firing. The boat wasn't coming together. And you're very aware the Olympics is coming closer and closer. Other people in the team were doing better in other boats. And we were 2 of the top athletes, and yet we weren't producing the results we wanted. So then it was kind of, are we in the right boat? Maybe we're not in the right boat. Maybe this isn't the best way to get our best Olympic success. For me, I was trying to get my 5th medal. Vicky, she was trying to get her 1st. And it was, Vicky's an athlete who is an Olympic level athlete without a shadow of a doubt. And she saw her best chance slipping away and really felt we had to do something about it. And then made Vicky made the statement first that basically we wouldn't do the double. And we wanted to effectively give that up and get a chance to row one of their boats. So the 8 was considered, but the 8 by that point was flying, and they were on a mission to be the first ever Olympic medal in the women's 8. And they didn't want new people coming into it, even if they were great athletes, because they had when you're in a crew and it works, so they just wanted to keep it as that. So the 8 was considered briefly, but not successfully. And there was basically no other boats at that point who had qualified. Between us, we weren't going to do the single. So the only option really left was the double. And yet we'd sort of publicly said we don't want to do the double and we don't believe in it. So it was a huge mental switch to sort of say, well, let's try it. Do we think we can resurrect this? And all of the reasons why we didn't think it would work, could we change them? At this point, it was only, we were certainly less than 3 months, maybe 2 months for the Olympic Games. We had about a week or 10 days where we didn't row anything. We didn't row in a boat at all while decisions were being made. And during that time, a lot of communication sort of went down as well. Vicky and I always got on really well, and that was the one saving grace. But there was issues with the selection, with the coaches. Everything was kind of just slightly falling apart. And to win the Olympics, you need to be at the top of your game and then have all the stars align. And we weren't at the top of our game, and nothing was aligning. And for quite a long time, it just looked incredibly bleak. I just couldn't see. I'd done this for 20 years. I could not see a way forward. I could not see an answer. I could not see how we could fix this. And it was the hardest part of my career. And despite at that point, I was more experienced than I'd ever been, and more successful than I'd ever been. And yet, probably the lowest and with the least amounts of confidence in any setup that I ever had. And that's tough. That's tough when you know what it takes to get on the Olympic podium, and now you've got weeks to try and turn this whole thing around. And one of the biggest turning points for me was we got one race together, Vicky and I, before the games. And we didn't medal. We hadn't won anything together really at that point. But we did a race where we weren't miles off it, but we were still. Considering it was the last race we did for Olympic Games, it felt like miles off. We weren't miles off. And the next day, it kind of at least we were cemented that we'd be selected and we'd get to go to the Olympic Games. And it was exactly 50 days, and I counted them till the Olympic final. And there's little psychological things you can play with. So leading up to say 2012, when everything was going great for Anna and I, we were on countdown mode. We were like, way, knock the days off, bring on the Olympic final. We're going to, of all the times, and you can't guarantee anything, that one was ours to win. With Vicky and I, it was almost felt exactly the reverse. We started from nothing, and we had 50 days left, and rather than counting down, I was very keen we were going to count up, because basically we started from nothing. And actually, rather than going, just 49 days to go, I wanted to go, right, well, that's 1 day we've done, and then that's 2 days we've done. And by counting up, you're adding to something all the time. And we needed to feel that we were adding in constantly to get what we needed to get to. So we went away in training camp. We compete against other, members of the team. The hardest thing is that the members of the team in the British team are some of the best in the world. So we were not, we couldn't get confidence competing against them because we weren't anywhere near that pace. So we kind of had to be on our own mission. This is our own thing. We're on our own path for a long way. And the days sort of started growing, and we did grow in confidence. We had to test a lot. But we wouldn't get to actually put it to the test until the Olympic Games. We didn't get to practice anything else. And then we'd have 3 races at the Olympic Games if all went well. So the first heat is just about, are we in the mix? And we didn't win any, of the heat or semi-final or anything like that, but we were okay. And then remember the semi-final being the big change in our event, and it was an insanely tough event. Everyone was basically the same speed, really. But we had the reigning world champions, we had the reigning world record holders, we had all these big names in it. I think we'd beaten one crew out of all the boats who were competing. And we wouldn't have been seen as a threat to anyone, really. But we still felt that we got it right, we could harness something. We both had to feel that. We both had to feel if we got this right, there was potential there. And we did the semi-final and came second. So got us in the final. I remember coming off from doing the BBC interview, and Steve Redgrave was standing there, slightly off camera. And he pulled me aside when Vicky was chatting to John Inverdale. And he said, right, don't react. But New Zealand and Australia are out. And they were the reigning record holders and the world champions. And I thought he was referring to they're out as in they're out ahead of everyone else. So I went, okay, fine. And he went, okay, just so they're out, yeah. And I went, yeah, it's fine. He said, don't react. And I said, no, it's fine. I can accept that. They're out. And he kind of kept looking at me going, he said, they're out as in they're out.
No.
And I was like, they're out as in they're gone. And he's like, yeah. And it was a bit like game on. Because suddenly, you know, the whole event was unfolding like no one predicted. The weather conditions were crazy. And sometimes when you're the really top favourites, you kind of want everything to go well because that's how you train and that's what you expect. Sometimes when in our side, everything had gone wrong. So actually, when the days got postponed and the days got cancelled and the things got redrawn and people were sinking, it was all fine because everything else was messed up anyway. So, you know, wasn't there a day like this to us? And we kind of thrived in that. We thrived in the fact that nothing was predictable and nothing was comfortable. And then at the end of the day, you get to the Olympic final. You know what? Doesn't matter what's gone before. It doesn't matter, you know, who's favourite, who's not favourite. It's a 2,000 metre race, and every single person will race that 2,000 metre race. And all that matters is what you do in that 2,000 metre race. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how many years you've done it for, how many medals you have to your name, how many. If you've never done this before, you have 2,000 metres, like everyone else in that race, to see what you can do with it. And we got to 500 metres, and first of all, we had with the worst stroke I've ever taken in my whole career, in the first stroke, because we didn't move. And I still don't know what happened. And then 500 metres later, we were leading, and Vicky was taking the bow seat, and she genuinely went, 500 metres, we're ahead. And she said it like, oh my God. And then 1,000 metres in, she went, we're still ahead. In a very surprised tone. And we just had the race of our lives on that day. Absolute race of our lives. And when you feel there's something very refreshing in a way, you've got nothing to lose. We had nothing to lose. No one thought we'd be able to pull out any result. We had the worst preparation imaginable. Nothing you would ever try and replicate. And in a way that frees you up because you think, there's no expectations on us anymore, so let's go and see. We still believe we were good enough. And then you get the privilege of getting to put it to the test. And some people will massively rise to that challenge and put in the performance, and some people get intimidated by those big races and don't bring out the best themselves. And luckily on that day we brought out the best in ourselves and raced better than anything we'd ever done in any of the things we'd done together. And Vicky was just outstanding in that race, the way she called it, the way she made her decisions, the way she raced, and she was very. I raced it in a different way, and she just followed it, and she just bought it and thought it was the way forward. And you need that trust and that relationship and that partnership in those moments to just fire, and it just fired on all cylinders. So we got the medal, and yeah, and it was lovely because I saw Steve just after it, and he gave a big hug, and he just said, it's not the best medal you've ever won because of the colour. You know, it will never be the best medal, but it's the best result you've ever had. And you know, when you've got someone like that who says that, who understands what it takes, then it matters. So having won the Olympics for it, there's always a bit because we almost won it. We did almost win that final. But I know we couldn't have done any more in the day, and that medal it was the hardest of all the medals to get, and for that reason it will always be immensely special. And only we really know what happened or what we went through to get that.
I guess just to conclude the whole event.
That wasn't a short answer, was it?
It was, it's all relative.
No, I just think it wasn't a short answer.
Just to conclude the whole event, what one bit of advice would you give? I suppose to a room of aspiring rowers, but also just to a group of people that are at some point in their university life that you've learned through your incredible career. Just something motivational.
just something motivational. I just think never settle. I just think there's something. I really believe everyone's very individual, and everyone has something that is their passion or that they care about or that they engage with, and everyone's slightly different on that. But if and when you find that is when you really find out what you're put on this earth to do and your mission in life, and it will come in so many different ways and unpredictable places and all that. But I think if you're lucky enough to find that, and that's why I don't settle, because life is short, and it will go so fast. And you do not want to spend your time in a world of doing something or with people that doesn't feel right. I think you know when it's not right. Because when it's right and you hit that right group or that people or that mission in life, then my God, it just takes off on a whole new level. So don't settle. If you've not found it yet, or if you're not in the right world, you're not the right people, then it's time to change or try something new. Because when you find it, everyone here will have some amazing contribution to make in some way. And I didn't know at university what form was going to come. And there's an argument. There might be more. I might have more that I haven't found yet. But you kind of owe it to yourself and owe it to everyone around you and owe it to the world in general. It's not being too funny. Because it's stuff that you will do that only you could do. And I absolutely believe that. And I see it time and time again, that everyone has some amazing individual thing to do in this world. So don't settle until you find it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for telling us about your fantastic career.
Thank you.
Should we...
Yes. Thank you. We're going this way.
Yeah, no, well,